Yeah, Ms. Porter is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Merbani, the Federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1988, or FVRA, authorizes the president to name an official to serve in an acting capacity until a permanent appointee is nominated or considered by the Senate. And this law, FVRA, limits who can serve in these temporary roles. And the purpose of those limits is to put guardrails in place to prevent officials without appropriate experience from being appointed. Is that a basically correct, good description?
Yeah, that's a great description.
And having qualified individuals serving in these roles helps guard against wasting taxpayer dollars by inexperienced or unqualified leadership. Is that right?
That's right. And it also ensures that Congress has their constitutional say in who serves in these important positions.
And FVRA, I said it was of 1988. It was first signed into law and enacted during the Clinton administration with a Republican-controlled Congress. Can you briefly explain what led that Republican-controlled Congress to pass the law, the FVRA law?
Thank you for this question. And it's an excellent one because it gets to the point that the reforms to the Vacancies Act have been bipartisan in the past. At the time, there were perceived abuses by President Clinton in installing acting officials against the will of the Senate in seeming perpetuity. And so Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, voted to implement this reform in 1998.
So this problem isn't new, but it does seem to have gotten worse again over the last 4 years. In fact, a landmark study by Professor Ann Joseph O'Connell, one of the leading scholars on vacancies, she found there was a significant increase in acting officials, and in this case, unqualified officials during the Trump administration. I asked Chair for an unanimous consent to enter Professor O'Connell's summary of her study into the hearing record.
Without objection.
Mr. Blackwood, I want to turn to you for a minute. I understand the Partnership for Public Service has tracked federal vacancies for a long time. Is the partnership a nonpartisan organization?
Yes, that's my simple answer to that question.
Yes. Ms. Hemkowitz, I appreciate that POGO, Project on Government Oversight, has done extensive work on the issue of vacancies as well. Is it fair to say that POGO has raised concerns about vacancies and the use of acting officials during administrations of both parties?
Yes, ma'am.
So the Trump administration's actions revealed ambiguity and loopholes with that Clinton era bipartisan vacancy law I mentioned, FVRA. And so this law needs updating. It's been clear for a long time, and what's happened in the last 4 years makes it very plain. My bill, the Accountability for Acting Officials Act, would close many of the loopholes in the current law. We've talked about how this issue of making sure we have qualified officials is a bipartisan one, both because it's about making sure government is effective, guarding against taxpayer dollars, protecting the constitutional say of Congress, and it's always historically been bipartisan. But as I prepare to reintroduce the Accountability for Acting Officials Act tomorrow, I still have yet to find a Republican to co-lead the bill. It's frustrating and it's disappointing. And I invite any of the Republicans participating in today's hearing to co-lead this bill with me. There was bipartisan support for FVRA in 1998. There should be bipartisan support for updating it now. Professor O'Connell submitted written testimony in support of this bill for today's hearing, and I ask unanimous consent for that statement to be entered into the hearing record.
Without objection.
I also ask unanimous consent, Madam Chairwoman, to enter a letter signed by several good government groups in support of this bill.
Without objection.
Thank you so much, and I yield back.